Alright, so I am just getting set up and hopefully we'll be good to go to start prepping shortly. Just checking that everything is working from my end of such things. Alright, it looks like all the tech stuff is up and running. So, welcome. So this is what I was working on yesterday and we'll be picking up again today. Just to show people who didn't see or haven't yet seen the videos. So this is how I found it. Just on its side, so you can hopefully just see the edge sort of just off to the center, right of center on the screen, sticking out. And this is from the video Ravenscar 10th March. So if you are interested in seeing how it looked when I first found it, this is it here. Yesterday we started prepping. This is the same side of what we now see. If you want to catch up with that just to see what's been going on, that's where we're at. And this is now where we are, so we've started to expose those whorls, but we've got a lot in the middle to get rid of. And so the goal for today will be to work on that. Typically, as soon as I start getting prepared for streaming, dog wants to go out, I'll pay the dog tax. Everyone likes the dog tax. There's the dog. So she wants to go out. Let me just let her out and then I will get this stream going. Right, dog settled back down, has decided that me talking isn't for her. If you've got any comments or questions throughout the day or the prep, just chuck them in chat and I will deal with them as soon as I can. Yeah, so my goal at the minute, I've still got this big knob on top of the ammonite that I'd like to get down, and then it will just be working through the last half centimetre, 5 mil worth of rock in the middle, and then we'll be there. Depending on how quickly that goes, I've got another Hildoceras from Ravenscar as well. I hadn't realised this was a Hildy, but you can tell if you look on the edge, you see the same distinctive pattern, and it's the very distinct Hildoceras keel. So I was looking through the ones that I found, saw this. I think this other one will be a fairly quick prep again, just to get rid of this here. So this is what will happen afterwards, depending on how quickly this Hildy goes. The other thing, if you look closely, you might see that my ring finger is a bit purpley red. It did not go particularly well when I was fossil hunting. I managed to trap it, so it's a bit bruised, but doing okay. So that's on the mend, and so we'll start prepping. so those who are just joining, welcome. Let me just drop something in chat because I was very aware that you don't hear me most of the time, especially when I'm working away. So do bear with me just so I can get something written down so people don't think I'm just ignoring. But do chuck any questions or comments in chat, and I can answer them as I go as well. There we go. So yeah, I'm going to just keep going with it. I say as this big bit gets removed fairly quickly now, the shell should start coming more and more visible. And it's prepping quite nicely, so I'm enjoying this. I enjoy Hildy's. Hildy's prep really nicely, so I'm liking it. For those eagle-eyed amongst you wondering why I'm leaving this little bit here, it's not that I don't want to remove it, it's just that it's being held on at the minute down here, and even though I've put a few little efforts on it, it hasn't cracked away just yet, which makes you think it will probably go if I just keep removing this. So I'm just carefully leaving it for the minute, and then we'll work through this bit, and hopefully as I get through this will then all break apart and come off fairly easily. Likewise with this section here. Though this section is just a bit difficult to see what's shell and what's not because of how much dust is on it, so that'll get a tidy up later. But yeah, this bit here is what the focus is still, and we'll just keep working on that. But it'd be cool to see where people are joining me from. So if you're willing to chuck your location or just send me a hello, it'd be cool to see who's here. So got rid of the majority of that bump now. That's now getting close to level, although there's still a fair bit to go to get all the way down to the middle. Shell's coming out quite nicely. Sorry, as I just have a drink as we go. But I reckon this will be another hour and a half worth of work as I go. But I'm hopeful this will be quite a nice one. Then after this one, yeah, as I said, the goal will be hopefully to start work on the next one, although that may begin off stream just so I can make these go a little quicker for you, because I appreciate that sometimes the Dremel itself is not exactly a super fast tool. It takes its sweet time to get through some of this rock. So it just will take a little bit of time to do them. So if I can speed that up off camera, I think I may be doing some of that for you in the future. But I'm going to get back to it. As I said, as always, chuck some stuff in chat if you have any questions or want to see if you can distract me from what I'm doing with some fun stories of the past, or some fossil hunts or dinosaurs or anything like that. Please do, and I'm happy to talk about. Also, something that may not be completely obvious to you, but I see it when I'm prepping. There's some natural cracks in the rock. So there's one that runs through here. And that's not just where I've been prepping. That I've made a line that looks like it's running through there. That's just a natural crack. It actually comes out down over here. And those can be really helpful when you're prepping because it tends to be where the rock itself will fracture, so you can be working towards it and then it'll just take a big chunk out just as you get to the edge of the crack, and vice versa on the other side. The downside is those are the areas you need to be super careful of, because as you're prepping, if that crack extends through this, you might just take out a chunk of fossil with your prep at the same time. So just be careful of it, but I'm going to use it to help get through some of this a bit quicker, because that crack will help remove some of this matrix fairly quickly. There's another little one that actually curves around in here, so I think that might be why some of this shell from the... So this would have been an even bigger hilly than I've got here, so this is a bigger whorl that probably would have continued around, but has since broken away, and it would have been the one that continued around this way. So this is shell from the same Hildoceras, but it's a bit lifted up and broken over this side, and I think that might be due to the crack. So this might get very tricky in here because of that crack, but at the same time I'm hoping that we can use it to help prep and get down to the center a bit easier. We'll see what the middle shell looks like when we get there though, because that can always make it a bit fun as well. But going alright. So far removed all of the big lump and got some more of the shell up there preserved, revealed. It is preserved, which is good. So we'll keep going. So yeah, this actually shows it really nicely. That crack that runs through it, you can actually see it here where I've prepped this side away, and as you hit the crack, basically this side will come away, whereas on the other side of the crack, because there's a crack there, this side won't get affected. So it breaks along that line, and that's why you've got this flat ridge here. It's not because I'm deliberately generating that with the prep tool. It's because that's how it's breaking naturally because of the crack. I'm just using that crack to try and prep this a bit quicker. But it's just something that you guys all should be aware of when you're prepping your own fossils. That these can be used to speed things up, but they also just need to be careful because they can be lines of weakness for your fossil. Yeah, that was a beautiful example of how you can use the cracks to expose a lot of fossil at once, because it just peels straight off the top. But it's just also being aware that if you do it in one fell swoop, that you might take shell with it. So it's just being aware of that. That's what I was just having a look for the bit I've just removed, just to see if there's any shell on it, because we can always take that and glue it back down if we want. But that doesn't look too bad, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. If you want to look after your fossil, obviously stop, give this a good clean. This corner here, you could give it a good clean. See if my webcam will focus, because that would be useful. Webcam, come on. Yeah, there we go. So you could always clean this out and then soak it in whatever adhesive you're using, Paraloid, B72, Movitel. All kind of do the same thing, the reversible glues. So you could then do that and then help protect this little bit of shell. I'm not going to worry about it. I don't think it's caused any damage, but it is something, as I was demonstrating, this crack can be used to help quickly remove stuff, but yeah, you just need to be careful when it actually gets to your fossil. Hey, Mr. Landfill. I haven't had anyone else talk to me so far, so it's nice to see someone actually in chat. I'm doing pretty well. Was just laughing with my finger. I've been to hospital this morning, so can't really tell. Thankfully, the dust is picked up, but I had concerns I'd broken this finger on the last fossil hunt carrying a rock and then pinned it between two other rocks, but just soft tissue. So that dark bit right there actually isn't dirt, that's bruise. But otherwise, pretty good. I get to prep fossils. Can't really complain about that on a Sunday. How are you doing? Glad to hear it. I have to say I'm much the same as you. I've always loved rocks and fossils. So my parents always tell me when my dad was running a marathon in Washington DC, he ran past us and I was too busy looking at the quartz in the road. So I very much understand that feel. I was very lucky that I was able to pursue my passion of rocks and fossils through my degrees and turn it into a job. Oh, that's cool that he became a geologist. Is he working with one of the mining companies or oil, or what's he doing now with his degree? Congrats to him then. Yeah, it's a cool degree to have. Opens a lot of opportunities. I had friends who did a geology degree who ended up Australia, in some of the mines out there, some who ended up in oil rigs across Indonesia, some who ended up in the North Sea. So lots of opportunities for him to travel the world and pursue his passions depending on what his interests are. And that being said, there's plenty of academic ones that I'm also friends with who've got jobs in not just academia but all over. Doing research, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on. That's a good way to do it. I'm surprised that most roofs are covered with rocks though. Whereabouts do you live in that you got roofs covered in rocks? I'm intrigued. Also, I do apologize, I will come in and out of chat, as you can hear when I turn this thing on. It's quite loud, and that's through a box that's fairly insulated for the sound, so I do apologize when I go quiet and let the music take over. It's just that it's very noisy doing the prep. But if you've got any questions as well, chuck them in the stream and I'll try and answer them when I can. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I have to say, Michigan is always being described as a very lovely place. I've got a few friends who live that way, and there's actually some really good YouTube channels that do fossil and rock collecting out on the Great Lakes, and there's some cool stuff, mostly Carboniferous by the looks of it, for at least the fossils, but then you've got some a lot older stuff with some of these algal mats that are called stromatolites that are much older. Yeah, so you got some really cool rocks out there, and also interesting that they using the rocks to look after the buildings. That's always fun. Yeah, so there's trilobites, which would be probably the most famous of the types, but then you get different types of shells. So most of the ones we see today are called bivalves. So they have basically two valves. Yes, what it means is two valves. So each side, like a clam, if you think about it, they have two very similar looking shells, one on each side. But in the past, they had some asymmetrical ones called brachiopods, which come from the same sort of time as the trilobites, or at least are very common at the same time as the trilobites were. So yeah, those are the main ones that you get, to my knowledge, in Michigan. I'm sure there's a lot more that I just don't know about. I'm sure there's some great plant and fish fossils there as well. But I just have to say, my knowledge is not perfect from all of the fossils from all of the places at all the times. But I am relying very much on a few of the channels I've seen where people are collecting from actually just on the Great Lakes. Whilst I was working away, I was just thinking of the name of the channel, and I think it's Michigan Rocks is the YouTube channel who does a lot of it, and I saw him doing some fossil collecting with a guy called Wild Kyle. Not necessarily everyone's cup of tea with Wild Kyle's personality, but I always find it enjoyable because it gets to just show someone loving what they're doing. And I just love seeing people passionate about their hobbies, be it fossils, rocks. Also, Wild Kyle does a lot of bottle collecting and things like that as well. So again, it brings me joy seeing people. To catch you up, so I'm working on this is an ammonite. It doesn't look very much like one at the minute. It's in the works. So it was found 2 days ago. Sorry, let me find the right image. So this is when I found it. If you look just off center of the screen, you can see the edge. To the right, off center that is, you can see the edge of the ammonite just sticking up from some gravel. If you want to go check out the video when I find it, that's the title of it in the top left of the screen. So that's the ammonite. I started yesterday on it, and that's what it looked like. I knew it's an ammonite just because I could see the edge of it sticking out in the rocks when I first collected it. So where I am now So this is the bit that I could see when I first collected it. We had a lot of rock covering this side. There is then a loop, or should be a loop if this was complete, of shell that would come around, complete this way, and slowly work towards the middle. Unfortunately, this bit was broken when I collected it, so it won't be complete all the way around. But what I'm then going to just do is slowly keep working down this rock using a Dremel engraver. If you're interested and passionate about fossils and fossil preps, it's a really good intro tool. It costs like $30, maybe a little bit more, but it's about £30 in the UK to get one. You can then get special tips. So this one's a little chisel tip, but you can get little ones which I'll be using later probably for the fine detail. And what you can then do with these, what are they, tungsten carbide I think it is, so they're harder than most rock. You can then use this engraver tool which just oscillates away. So if I can gently pull on this end just slowly goes in and out like that. But I say slowly, it goes at a high speed and just vibrates back and forth. And as it's doing that, it's basically acting like a little jackhammer and just chiseling away the rock from the fossil itself. This, unfortunately, is not the best compared to the high-tech ones. You can get really fancy tools called air scribes, which are running on compressed air that do basically exactly the same as this, but at a much higher speed and a lot higher power. And yeah, as far as other fossils, yeah, there's an edge of another ammonite species. Those are Dactylioceras species. That's at the bottom right of that image. So to give you an idea, I have a much nicer complete one of those that I prepped previously, and that's kind of what this one will look like, except kind of that way around, missing the bottom half. It's also a different species, so this is called Dactylioceras, and it has these ribs that make it quite defined and distinct. Hildoceras, which is the species that I'm currently working on, don't have the same ribs. You can see they're kind of a lot smoother, and these are just kind of blending in, but it also has this distinct keel, as it's called, which looks completely different. So Dactylioceras edges are just these ribs that run all the way across the top of them, but Hildoceras has a very different one. So that's the difference between the two species. There are multiple other species. So one I was working on yesterday, which hasn't come out quite as nicely through the center. The rock was fairly stuck on, but it has these little bumps on it, these nodes, and this is called a Perinoceras, and this one I was prepping yesterday on stream as well. So this one was covered in rock to a level not dissimilar to this on each side, and removed that to try and expose it. Sadly, the middle's gone. So ammonites are filled with air. When they're alive, they use a series of chambers to basically control their buoyancy, and as the animal grows, it goes and moves from chamber to chamber towards the biggest chambers at the end. But these chambers are filled with air or fluid to help control their buoyancy in the water column. And because they're filled with air and they've become fossils and are squished by rock, sometimes these little bits of shell compress and explode. And so that's what happened to the center of this, and also what's happened here. So sadly, sometimes we don't get perfectly preserved ammonites. I mean, ignore the fact this one's broken from probably the waves from when it fell out, but even the middle of these may not be perfectly preserved. But we'll just have to see what it looks like as we go on. It's not perfect. It will probably still take me, what time are we at? Probably another hour and a half of doing it. So if you bear with me, it's not always a super fast process. But I will keep working away on it, and if you've got questions, keep chucking them at me in chat or comments, and I will answer them. And if you are okay with me chatting away to you with the noise of the tool in the background, I can do that too. Otherwise, I will put you back onto the very calming music. you say noise is fine, it's just giving you the idea again of just the difference in it. So the music will basically disappear, but this is the noise of the tool. And if you haven't seen, and I do apologize, my box is slowly steaming up a little bit because it's warm. I've got a wooden box which is keeping most of the noise and dust and debris in it at the minute. It's got a glass top, which is how I'm filming through it as I prep. But it does not stop the noise coming through because this little electrical tool is very noisy. The air compressed tools are less noisy on their own, but the air compressors there are the noisy things in that. And now, there we go. I'm just trying to get my autofocus on my camera back. And those of you who are watching, what brought you to the channel today? Did Mam Lambo send you? Yeah, I'm happy to keep talking about things. Give me a topic and I will talk to you for ages, particularly if it's fossil related. I can quite happily talk to you about my research, what I was doing research. I guess I still kind of am. I've got a PhD student at the minute who's doing some work on human feeding and fossil humans. I did a lot of work on dinosaurs and have been lucky to travel the world and go digging and collecting fossils around the world. Or if you just have any specific questions about something to do with rocks or fossils or even what I'm doing at any given time, I can try and help and try and answer them. No guarantees I can answer it all. When it comes to this fossil, I then have got myself distracted chatting to you and I've just dinged it. So something that's a good example of why it's a bit of a problem if you're not paying attention. So this tool, vibrating back and forth at high speed, if you're not paying close attention, you basically ding the fossil. I'm not too fast, it happens, but it is just something to be aware of and something that I should be paying more attention. It's part of the example of when you're working with the tool, you should never be applying a lot of force. You should be letting the tool do the work for you, kind of like if you're using a jackhammer, I'm told, having never used one myself. You're not going to make the jackhammer work harder by leaning all your body on it, really. What you are going to then do is lose some of the control if you're doing that. So in theory, it's just adjusting the angle that I'm working at to make the tool do the work for me. Random stories about dinosaurs then. Yeah, cool. I can talk to you about the first time I ever went fossil hunting. Well, I say fossil hunting. The first time I ever went dinosaur digging. I was very lucky. I was doing the degree at the University of Bristol in the UK. As I was there, they had a fossil prep lab and I got involved with it. There's a species of dinosaur found in Bristol in the UK called Thecodontosaurus. Thecodontosaurus is quite important. It was the third dinosaur ever described, although it was described before the term dinosaur came to be. Richard Owen back in the 1800s described dinosaurs. It took a lot longer actually though for them to realise that Thecodontosaurus, this dinosaur from Bristol, was actually a dinosaur, not just a weird other lizard. So that happened quite a bit later, but it was the third one ever found and described. But yeah, so I was working in the prep lab in Bristol and working on these dinosaur bones and also using acid to help break the bones apart. And as part of that, they had a preparator, a guy who works on basically making all the fossils look pretty and get them out of the rock. And as part of my volunteer work, he said he could probably get me out on a dinosaur dig. So he had plenty of contacts around the world, including at the Museum of the Rockies in Montana. Every year they go out digging for multiple weeks or months, depending on exactly the field site and the crews that they have. So they went out, or were heading out to Hell Creek, quite a famous site if you don't know. It's where most of the Tyrannosaurus rexes and Triceratopses of North America come from, that or similar formations in North and South Dakota. And so they were headed out to do their annual dig, and I got asked if I got added to that because of my contacts through the University of Bristol in the prep lab. And with that team, I then went to spend 2 weeks out in the field with them. I will get some images for a later video down the line, I'm sure. And yeah, so I was out in the field. I had never been digging for dinosaurs. I've been fossil collecting in my spare time previously, so quite a different experience to go from looking for ammonites and marine reptile stuff in the UK to then finding or trying to find dinosaurs in the USA. When I got there, they'd already discovered a site where there were some bones sticking out of the hill. The bone that they'd recovered included a horn, so they knew it was a Triceratops, or likely a Triceratops. And so we were then to spend 2 weeks digging up this Triceratops in the Badlands of Hell Creek in Montana. It was really cool. That skull belongs to a Triceratops called Yoshi's trike, kind of like Yoshi from Mario, is how you can describe it. Is the name. It's named after a paleontologist, though, the guy who found it. And if you want to have a look, that Triceratops is actually now on display in the Museum of the Rockies. If you Google Yoshi's Triceratops or Yoshi's trike, you'll be able to see it. So I helped dig up the skull and a few vertebrae. We also found some tyrannosaur teeth around it as well. So it suggests that this specimen of Triceratops had been at least eaten, whether or not it was killed by a T-Rex. Bits of it were definitely eaten and scavenged by a T-Rex after the fact. And so that was the cool bit of it. It was really funny because on the dig itself, we started finding, they already knew this happened, I didn't, but we found that, sorry, just bear with me as I'm trying to focus on a little bit. Right, so the plants are growing through the rocks in the Hell Creek Formation, and they grow in certain areas particularly, and I was surprised to find that, or hear, that the plants often are using dinosaur bone not just as a source of nutrients, but also they basically follow the edges of the dinosaur bones. So the same way that, and the same reason that the rock is popping off the fossils here, there tends to be small gaps between the fossil and the rock, at least if the fossil is well preserved. The plants are using the same gap to get their roots down and through, and then are able to collect not just the nutrients out of the fossil, but the water that's running along the top of them as well. So I laughed when we were there because there was a bunch of plants going into the hill, that it'd be really funny if the rest of it was just following, you could follow the plants and dig the rest of it up. And it turns out, yeah, that I say it's a really cool Triceratops, that one. Yeah, the rest of the body was then in the hill underneath all these plants. They dug it up the next year. I didn't go back. I was in Canada digging up dinosaurs there instead. But yeah, the horns are ridiculous. They're like 6 foot long, and we were digging around them, digging them up. It was cool, really cool. As a first site, there were that year. Whilst I was there in those 2 weeks, they had one big field crew. It split up into lots of little bits each day, depending on what was going on. They dug up, I think, a couple of small Triceratopses amongst the smallest ever found. I think it's something like the 6th smallest ever found was dug up that season as well. There were bits of Tyrannosaurus dug up, various other bits and pieces. But yeah, it's a really cool Triceratops. I was very lucky to be involved with it. Some of my friends that I made after the fact were digging it up the next year. So it's a fun link that just kind of shows how small the paleo world was. That a year apart we ended up working on the same specimen. and yet didn't know each other, and got to know each other later and talk about our experiences digging it. But yeah, they're really cool Triceratops, and the mount's really cool as well. As I'm assuming, based on the fact we've managed to find it online, to find out it's got the largest known horns of any Triceratops. The mount's really nice because it's displayed in such a way that the brown is the original bone, and all the white around it is stuff that they've had to copy or fill in the gaps because it wasn't preserved. So it's quite a nice display, because a lot of displays nowadays don't necessarily show what's real and what's not, and I really like it. Hi Anne. So currently I'm using the, if it'll focus, the chisel tip, just because it takes off rock fairly quickly. This rock is not super hard. The chisel tip isn't great when the rock's super hard or you're trying to be super fine. I've got my Dremel cranked up to 5 to try and get rid of this rock as quickly as possible. It means I have less control. So as I was saying earlier, when I was paying not as much attention as I should have been, you can see 2 little dings there. So just a nice reminder of, if you're doing it yourself, things to be aware of. If I was trying to do the fine work, I would turn this down. I found for the Yorkshire stuff, 3 or 4 tends to be a pretty good level. The Dremel has a bit of control to it. It'll also make a bit less noise too. So, but the difference between that and that isn't that much for you guys, I'm sure. So, yeah, so that was my my dig in Montana. Give me another topic and I will talk to you about that. Or if you want to hear more about dinosaurs, I can talk to you about my next year. When I was out in Canada, or one of my other years, or even just what got me into fossil hunting. I'm quite happy to talk about it all. But give me a topic, so I don't bore you to death with my inane ramblings. Oh, and I guess I should have also said, so the tip I'm using is the chisel tip from Zoic. I've got the others. If you haven't been on them, website there, Zoic Paleo tip, check. I've got all 3 tips. I used the short one previously. I got a hint from some colleagues that the chisel tip might be a good one, and I used the long one a lot for my fine work. It's got a sharper tip and seems to offer a bit more control. The biggest challenge with the Dremel that you might just be able to see here is it's moving in and out, but it's also moving up and down, or at least as far as the screen is concerned, up and down. So parking lot find, Mr. Landfill, I'm assuming you mean the thing that I found on the way out of the site. If so, or do you just mean sat in a driveway or a car park and just picked something up off the floor? So I got stories for both of those, although one is admittedly far better than the other. Driveway. Recently, my fiance's sister moved into a new place with her husband, her family, and funnily enough, we were just walking out of their house. I was looking down and picked up a chunk of ammonite, just like this actually. That was just sat in their driveway. They don't really care about fossils, but then spent a bit of time just wandering around, and it turns out that their driveway is made up of a lot of sort of small stones. But within them there's also another type of fossil that's quite common from the Jurassic in the UK called Gryphea, or devil's toenails, and picked up quite a few of those actually. As far as best find on the way out, the year after I was digging up Yoshi's trike in Montana with the crew of the Museum of the Rockies, I said I was very much the low man on the totem pole there, but in the following year I went and joined a team from the University of Alberta. They go digging all over the place every year. the crew I joined was digging in a place called Dinosaur Provincial Park in Alberta, so named because it's a disgustingly stupid place for how many dinosaur bones there are there. Like, not even funny how many dinosaur bones there are. There are areas that have got bone beds that are kilometers squared of just bones that are sticking out of the hills, presumably flood events. So yeah, silly place. On the last day of that dig, we went to go dig up a turtle that someone had found, or at least a turtle shell that someone had found previously, and we'd finished digging it out, jacketed it, and we're getting ready to carry it out. I went to go relieve myself around behind a hill, looked down where I was about to go, and yeah, typically there was a bunch of ribs sticking out the hill right below me, so I had to move on a bit and got to report that there's a dinosaur sticking out the hill. So yeah, it's always a bit funny, and I'm not dissimilar. Like, if there's a set of rocks around, I will be looking at them. Go to a beach with some cliffs and I'll be looking at the cliffs, not the sandy beaches. My fiancée is the exact opposite, but she tolerates my love of fossils because she loves me, thankfully. My dog is not great at finding fossils, but loves running around on the beach and is very confused why I'm not picking up and throwing things for her, but gives a chance to get out. So chuck us some more stories or things you want me to talk about, and I will keep talking to you about them. Because I never know what people are going to be most interested by, so I'd much rather you keep giving me topics and ideas, and I will keep talking to you about stuff I've done or found, or even if you've just got a question about fossils in general. Need not be about my personal experiences. I try and answer them. Someone asked yesterday, how can we age ammonites? Can we age them using the chambers? And I honestly don't have a clue. But I thought it was a really good question. Spent a bit of time yesterday seeing if anyone could tell the age of a nautilus, which is the living relative of ammonites, which also lived around, or lived early before the dinosaurs, lived after the dinosaurs, whereas ammonites died when the dinosaurs died. But someone asked if we could age them, and it doesn't seem like there's a definitive way of aging even nautiloids or nautiluses, the modern living ones, other than they start at birth with something like 4 chambers, and when they're fully grown, the number gets up to, I think, 20. But I don't know if there's a definitive every year they gain a chamber. I don't think it's quite like trees, where they gain rings every year. Or even some reptiles that have that, and dinosaurs do as well, that have these tree-like rings to help age them. I don't believe ammonites are like that. Yesterday I was also saying, the other part of that makes it even more complicated is that there's quite a big size differential within even a species. The male and female are very different sizes, so females tend to get much bigger. We see this in all cephalopods, so squids, octopuses, the things that ammonites are related to. That the males tend to be quite small, females tend to be quite big, and that's because they have to lay the eggs, so they need to have a much larger resource, much larger body to collect and have the energy to produce the eggs. So yeah, it makes it extra complicated trying to figure out how old things are when the males can be a lot smaller than the females. So are you looking at a young female or a fully mature male? And things like that might be very difficult without actually breaking open your ammonite to figure out how many chambers there are. As for can a novice be helpful on dig? Yeah, incredibly. So I was very much the novice. The first dig I went out on, I've been looking for fossils. I knew what I was doing roughly, but with regard to actually anything else, I was very much the beginner. If you are enthused, it is worth checking out your local universities or museums. A lot of them in the US go out every year. I believe the University of Michigan it is that has some. I might be wrong with that, but some of them do. Otherwise, the Royal Ontario Museum might be your next closest big place that I know definitely does digs. The University of Alberta, as I said, the ones that I joined, the Museum of the Rockies do. Although a lot of them will tend to focus on students rather than enthused older people. Sorry for a lack of better term. But yeah, depending on what the dig is, you might just end up doing that and hauling lots of rock. I know for one of the field seasons that the Museum of the Rockies did, I think it lasted the better part of 3 months. I might even be wrong with the duration, but it might be even longer than that. When they were digging up Sue the T-Rex, was it Sue? One of the T-Rexes that they dug up, or was it B-Rex? Bob Rex. Yeah, B-Rex. They spent basically the first 6 crews did nothing but jackhammer away rock and move rock before they got down to the fossil, because they found its teeth sticking out. Oh, sorry, not its teeth, its toes sticking out the bottom of the cliff, so they had to dig the whole cliff away to get down to it. So yeah, they moved a lot of rock. As for University of Michigan finding woolly mammoth, that doesn't surprise me. I think they've also, if I'm not mistaken, got a few people who do work on fossil fish as well from, I think, Carboniferous Devonian times, but all across. So they will almost certainly be doing collection work, but where they are collecting, I would not know. But yeah, if you're interested in fossil hunting, seriously, like, the best bet is to go speak to museums, universities, and find out who is most likely to be going. Most universities with a large geology department will be doing some field work. In the US, those that have any level of paleontology tend to have a field crew each year. The size of which will be determined by how much money they have as a university as a whole, and also how much they can generate from donors or even people paying to go along to dig. What I would say is there are plenty of commercial digs in the US as well. You can pay to go digging for a dinosaur. The amount of money you pay can be quite silly. I never paid to go digging. Admittedly, it helped that I was a student becoming a paleontologist. You can use your own judgment on whether or not you think it's worthwhile paying someone to dig commercially. The biggest issue I have with most of the commercial dig sites is that they then will have people pay to dig and then make someone else pay to own the specimen. The specimen doesn't end up in a museum by default. Someone can buy it, so various celebrities have dinosaur skulls. I want to say... crap, I just blanked on the guy from is it National Treasure? Nick Cage. He had a Tarbosaurus, like a Tyrannosaurus skull that he gave back that turned out to be illegally hunted by people in Mongolia, if I remember correctly. So yeah, it's the one thing you have to just be a bit careful of with commercial hunts. Yeah, you're paying, but it also doesn't mean that that specimen's going to end up in a museum. It's probably going to get sold. So they're then making money both off you digging, but then off selling the specimen. And so if you want to make sure that your specimens and the things that you're digging up and possibly paying to help dig up end up in a proper collection, yeah, museums, universities are the best bet for that. Yep, I was going to say, and yeah, as I think most geology departments in the US do take advantage of the fact that you guys have an enormous country with a huge diversity of not just fossils, but also rocks and ages of rocks, depending on exactly where in the country you are and what their interests are. So they get a lot of time out in the field, and they use it to train the students up, but also to then dig up stuff, which then they can use to help generate funds for themselves. But yeah, as I say, there's no judgment if you choose to go onto a commercial site, if you want to do that, because you can't get onto one of the other ones by volunteering. There's no judgment for it, it's just to be aware of it. Everyone here is their own individual, they're able to decide what's best for them. My personal opinions on the commercial side are quite variable. I, at the minute, do not sell my fossils, nor do I plan to anytime. But at the same time, I am far from the best fossil preparator. I do this for fun. I'm not terrible at it. As you can see, it's going pretty well. You can see this edge of the ammonite whorl coming out quite nicely at the minute. But as I demonstrated when I dinged the fossil up here, not perfect, not the best, don't have the best tools, I accept that. So my best fossils, the ones that I found last week or 2 weeks ago now, I found the spine of a marine reptile, and a really nice one of these that's like 6 inches wide. I would say one of these ammonites that's about 6 inches wide. Check out the videos if you're interested. Port Mulgrave 1 and 2. They have been sent to a professional, well, I say professional preparator, but a guy who makes his living preparing fossils, and they sell their fossils. So as much as I say they're not great necessarily because their fossils get sold to people and they don't go to museum collections, in some places they're the best people. They know more than a lot of other individuals. They have more skills and knowledge of the local area, potentially. So it's just something to be aware of. And I am taking advantage of commercial collectors to prepare my fossils, just because they will do a better job than I will, because they have a lot more experience and knowledge than I do. So I don't want anyone to think of me as hypocritical for it, just so that you're all aware. That's reality. Yeah, we have the same in the UK. There's a handful of sites. So the Isle of Arran in Scotland is probably the most famous in England. It's got a mixture of all sorts of geology, not just fossils. It's got fossils, but not just. It's got a lot of volcanic material and metamorphic stuff, and rocks that from different ages that are sat on top of each other, showing unconformities. Called Hutton's Unconformity, one of the really important sites, or at least an equivalent part of one of the really important sites in the UK. And if anyone else has any questions, I appreciate that not just one person in chat, but feel free to chuck your own questions in as well. Otherwise, if you're happy listening to me babble away to Mr. Landfill and his questions, and I am quite happy to keep doing it, I'm just going to take a very quick break just to give this a quick brush down, just to see where we're at, because the dust unfortunately gets a bit silly as you get later in the specimens. Sadly, one of the problems with the Engraver is it doesn't generate its own stream of air. The air scribes do. So the ones that run on compressed air to drive that oscillating jackhammer-like motion, they have a little jet of air that comes out the front and blows away the dust, which makes life a lot easier. But the Engraver doesn't, so it becomes very tricky, especially later when you're doing the fine work, that the dust buildup stops you being able to see everything. And now, if you hear clip clopping, my dog is currently running around underneath me, wondering why I'm talking randomly to someone who's not here, which always brings me joy seeing her running around the house. But where we're at, and something that I like showing off, which is really beautiful on this specimen, you might be able to see these like leaf-shaped patterns here, if it's going to just focus and hold the focus. Here you go. So you can see those lines that kind of look a little wiggly and broken. They're called sutures, and they're the joins between the different body chambers. So there'll be a chamber here, a chamber here, a chamber here, and the complexity of them increases through time in general with ammonites. It's supposed to be a structural feature that helps strengthen the ammonite to help deal with the changes in pressure. We have sutures similar like to this in our skulls. And it's basically the connections between different bones in our skull generate these same sort of leafy patterns. So it's quite a nice thing. Same name, suture in the skull, suture in an ammonite shell. The difference is these are growth separations of growth chambers, whereas the sutures in human skulls are just the joining of the bones of the skull as you grow up. Basically all the soft spots in a baby's skull as they join together. That's what you get, that's where the sutures are. That's my other background. I spend enough time teaching anatomy that I should know a little bit of it at least. But yeah, we're getting there. Getting there in a hurry now. So bit over here to tidy up this little bit here. And then otherwise it's just working this away. But I think we're probably getting pretty close. And about the time I estimated. So I'm just going to keep cracking on with it. If people in chat aren't going to ask me questions, I might just mute myself and put the music back on. Otherwise you do just hear the noise. But if you're happy to just ask me questions and have me babble away in the background, I will do that as well with the tool running as I go. So check some questions, and if you don't in the next 5 minutes, I'm going to mute myself and let you all listen to the music rather than the meh of the tool. Good timing. No one has asked any questions, so I was basically just babbling away to myself. I was just showing off when this focus is. Yeah, so part of the preservation, this is iron pyrite, so fool's gold, which gives it the beautiful color if it's going to focus. There you go. But you can also hopefully see some of these leafy shaped patterns on the shell here. These are called sutures. And it's basically they join the different chambers. So we've got a chamber here, a chamber here, chamber here, and there's sutures that basically are structural joins between these different chambers. They're really well preserved on this one, but it also is quite fun. So you can see this here, this black outer stuff here. This is the original shell, or at least the equivalent of the original shell, being replaced and remineralized. Underneath that, you get more layers of shell, and then underneath all of that, the infill tends to get pyritized, at least in Yorkshire. So you get this sort of replacement of the original shell with pyrite underneath. But it is the challenge when you're prepping. What's your preference? Do you try and keep the shell? This is all just popped off, so I removed the last bit of rock above it. Or do you want to try and get the pyrite and see all the stuff underneath? I try and keep as much of the original as possible, but everyone has their own preference for what they think looks best, and sometimes the fossil doesn't give you a choice. It is what it is. But yeah, if you got anything you want to hear about, chuck it in the chat, and I will talk to you about it whilst I continue prepping away. Oh, actually, I was going to babble away about Aaron. Just as you disappeared, you were saying about all students in the US having to go to Jackson Hole in Wyoming. The UK, we have the equivalent, a place called the Isle of Arran in Scotland. Beautiful place when it's not raining. I got very lucky in my undergrad when I went. It wasn't raining that year. Then I've seen photos from previous and years since where it's covered in snow, so very lucky. But yeah, it's a beautiful island in Scotland, and got some amazing geology. It's not just fossils, don't get me wrong, there's some there. They've got some really cool trackways, including like 6 foot long millipede trackways. When I say 6 foot long, I mean the millipede itself is 6 foot long, not the trackway is 6 foot long. So you end up with a trackway that's like 2 or 3 foot wide, and just incredible to see. So again, if you're interested, there's some really cool ones. I can't think of the name of the species of millipede that gets really big. But yeah, they've got some really cool ones there. They've also got some crocodilomorph footprints and similar things. But the main reason most people go is it's got a really cool site related to what's called Hutton's unconformity. So Hutton is a geologist from the UK. I want to say 1700s, it might be even earlier. When they're busy trying to figure out Earth, the rocks, the ages of rocks at the beginning of it. And he recognised a place in Scotland, not Arran, but in Scotland, where they found layers of rocks of very different ages stacked on top of each other. And so this is what's called an unconformity. And the unconformities are an indicator where you basically get the old rock laid down, it lithifies, it turns to stone, and then you tend to get an erosional event. So floodings, or it goes underwater and gets washed away, or comes above land and you don't get the deposition of new stuff on top of it. And then sometime later you get new material deposited on top. And so you can end up with the old rock underneath at some really interesting angles, particularly if it's been folded or lifted or deformed. And then the Hutton unconformity has the rocks that are pretty much vertical as the old ones underneath. And then the new ones, the young ones on top, are pretty much horizontal, which is a good indicator that they're of a very different age, because they're very different orientation. Whereas if they're all continuous, they'd all be all vertical or all horizontal. That being said, even some of the unconformities you can get, or can be all horizontal, but you tend to find erosional layers where you basically, instead of being a smooth surface, you get what you might imagine you'd expect if you put a lot of water or flooding or erosion, that the lovely smooth rock layer then ends up with a really disturbed top layer. But we're getting there quickly now. We've done the hard bit. You can now see most of the middle starting to come out. Just this section left to do. So it's going to, looking really good. So yeah, chuck us another question or thing you want to hear about, and I will keep talking. As much as I love the music, I have listened to it a lot of times. It repeats every about 40 minutes. So I know roughly how long I've been going based on how many times I hear this song. And it's quite nice sometimes not to be listening to just the music and chatting away to people who are obviously very enthusiastic. Alright, then if no one's going to ask questions, I will pose one for you all. What fossil would you most like to have in your personal collection? Or what fossil would you love to see found? Or equally, what would you like to find? Most remote site I helped dig at. So most remote was down in Patagonia. Although your definition of remote might depend a little bit on what you count as civilization or people. So we were right down in, I would say, the south of Argentina. We're getting close to the south of Argentina. And was digging there at a site that's probably Triassic, early Jurassic boundary, place where a species called Musaurus is found, M-U-S-S, a Saurus, whatever, something like that. My brain has just struggled with it. And it's got a nesting site, and they've got embryos in eggs. But yeah, it was right down in Patagonia, so a long way from most large towns. That being said, we were staying at I would say a farming station. That's probably the closest thing to it. But the Argentinian equivalent, which had two guys who occasionally hunted a few wild guanaco, things that look like llamas, rather than farmed very much. Otherwise, yeah, that's going to be the most remote. I've been to India digging. I've been to Argentina into the north in a place called Salta province. But I would say Salta was far less remote based on the fact we visited a vineyard on one of the seasons we were there. So obviously not super remote if you can go find a vineyard. That did make it a lot more fun though, as your reward after digging, you get yourself a bottle of very, very nice Argentine wine. But that Salta site still probably my favorite place I've been digging. Absolutely beautiful. That and Central Park, but Salta province, where we were, the rocks were just beautiful. They were like lots of different colors. There's, I think it's called like the Painted Mountain or the Rainbow Mountain or something in South America too, Chile, somewhere like that, where you might have seen a famous sight of people like walking on a cliff or the top of a hill, and they're all different colors as you walk along the layers. And Salta was very much like that, that every place you went, the rocks had a different color. The layers were just beautiful. The scenery was stunning and remote. I would go back there quite happily. That was probably my favorite. I just loved it. Didn't love the altitude. We were at like 3,000 meters. I might be wrong with that altitude, but it was up a long way, and you definitely felt breathless if you did a trek up one of the hills. But was picturesque, and every day you could wake up to it. Some of the places hadn't seen rain in like a year. Funnily enough, one of the seasons, or the next season, I wasn't able to join them. They went out and they actually found my footprints. So they obviously hadn't had much rain in between seasons either, if they could still find my footprints. I had a very distinct set of shoes that were diamond shaped out there. Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of fossils like that. If you look in my backyard, and I feel sorry for the poor bugger who comes along and finds that and goes, how the hell do all these fossils end up here? But there's a lot of them like that. There's some really cool sites actually where humans have been involved with moving things, whether it be they're hunting the animals at the time, using them to make tools. I think the most beautiful fossil I have seen, as far as like sort of odd as a fossil to be that way, is in a stone tool They actually have deliberately carved around a fossil that was found in the silica to produce a tool. There's a little shell in it, and it is beautiful, and probably highly prized by someone. But otherwise, you get a few famous sites in the USA where there's like dinosaur fossils in areas that are after the mass extinction, and it's a question of, are they a depositional thing, like have they been eroded in there from older rocks, or are they living after the dinosaurs are supposed to have died, and they're nearly always eroded events. The ones that I would love to go have a look at would be all the ones in Antarctica, which seems a bit bonkers to us, that anything could be living there other than, say, some penguins. But there are some fossil sites that have like fossil rainforests, dinosaurs, all sorts of stuff from when the world was obviously much, much warmer. So yeah, I think this is the most people I've had ever listening to a stream at the minute, or watching a stream. So people, if you've got questions, do chuck them in. Otherwise, Mr. Landfill, thank you very much for keeping me entertained and talking to me the whole time. As I get closer and closer to finishing this lovely ammonite, and there goes the center. Beautiful. That goes all the way down to the middle. That's what we like to see. He says. Yeah, so that actually is preserved all the way down, which is nice to see. So we're getting really close now. So it's just making sure we don't bugger it up at the end, which would be a shame after all of this time. But it also goes a lot quicker at this stage when you've removed a lot of the rock. It feels more inclined to go because it's now got lots of weaknesses that you've generated across the rest of the work. And you might have just seen there a couple of times. There's the joy of this, as I was saying. So this here is some of the original shell. Let me turn off the fossil prep. So this is some of the original shell. That's just pinged off when I was prepping. It's not the end of the world. It comes off. It just is part of it. It does mean that we can see more of the suture patterns. I would much rather it stayed on and that sort of you get a nice bit of suture in one place, but then the original fossil and the rest. But unfortunately, it's just the way that it is sometimes that it just pings off as you're prepping, particularly for some of these last little bits of rock. If I was being really precise, you could use a different tool, do it a lot slower, and you might preserve more of the original shell. But honestly, I think that looks pretty stunning in the middle there. That looks really good. I'm actually looking at this on the stream rather than through my glass, which is slowly fogging up actually, because it's got quite warm here, having been -4 the last few days in Celsius. But I'm just going to put that down for a second, grab myself a drink and just wipe off my screen because it's got very steamy in the box, but I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. So we're getting there. the middle is pretty much done. There's a little bit of rock just here I'd like to see if I can get off. I'm going to have a look at just trying to get this little edge tidied up, although I think some of that might have a break between this outermost whorl, or at least the continuation of this whorl, and the next one in. But we'll have a look as we prep it just to see what's going on there. But you might see here, for example, the shell. Oh, he realizes he's got the text on. There we go. So you might be able to see the shell here, this black, but extends down over this next layer, and there's still rock in here. So there very well might be some rock and shell broken mixed into this section here, which will make this last little bit a bit of a pain in the butt to prep, and it may not go super well. But I'm not going to complain about the quality of this ammonite prep overall. It's come out really nicely in the middle, really nicely. I'll give this a proper scrubbing. He says, yeah, come on camera. There we go. Yeah, so that goes all the way down to the middle, and it looks really good all the way down. So I'm not going to complain even if this bit's a bit of a mess. This bit here is beautiful, and will look even better when it's given a proper wash to get rid of the last bits of dust. So yeah, really pleased. And every time I do an ammonite prep, I feel like I get a little bit better. So always bodes well for the future that some of these are going well, because I'm hoping as I get hopefully some more subscribers, get a bit of money maybe from this, that I might be able to get some better tools to do a better job of this, and then be able to share even more with you guys, which would be my dream, because I really love doing this. Super cathartic and relaxing for me just to be able to sit, kind of focus on nothing else in the world but what I'm doing right now. And I do love fossils. Yeah, so that break that I used earlier to prep actually did shatter the shell there, which is a bit of a shame, but yeah, not going to worry too much about it. Also, maybe one of the things that most horrified me when I was first learning and training to be a paleontologist, I kind of was of the opinion every fossil is super special. You must do everything you can to avoid damaging them, breaking them, which, don't get me wrong, great opinion to have, but certain fossils, certain things will happen no matter what you do. Some fossils will always break. Some of them are preserved in such a way that there's nothing you can do about it. There's also sometimes some good use that in destructive sampling. Cheers, Mr. Landfill. I mean, I chuck videos up when I do hunts or when I do a prep. I also try to stream whenever I am doing fossil preparation, which at the minute for better or worse, I'm currently enjoying a bit of time away from academia, so have some time, so I am prepping and fossil hunting quite a lot at the minute. So when I put videos on, if you're subscribed, then you should be able to catch them all. And likewise, if anyone else is interested, please do that standard stereotypical YouTube thing, like and subscribe, or press on the alerts, you'll see all the videos as they come up. And a little bit when I say that I'm done or done enough with this fossil, I'll show you what it looked like when I found it, what it looked like yesterday when I started, and then where we are now with it. And yeah, I do appreciate you chatting to me the whole time. It does make this a lot more fun as well, I have to say, having someone clearly very enthused talking away at me, asking questions, so thank you for that.
Yeah, so that looks to be the end of the shell there. So I'm just going to nibble away at this corner a little bit more.
Yeah, so the shell on the larger end is here, but yeah, that seems to be the boundary that I pretty much just defined there. It doesn't continue all the way up to this section here. It does continue around, and actually in some of this section that I'm trying to tidy up, you might see that there's actually shell in amongst the matrix.
So I'm having a bit of a dilemma, how much of this I want to try and prep versus how much do I just accept that there's a bit of shell in it. And this is probably where my inexperience will show when it comes to prep, that I don't know what is the best way to do it. And the joys of there being a lot of ammonites at least, is you can try with some of these and learn from them without worrying too much. Because like this one here, lovely ammonite, not going to complain at all about the state that I've prepped it to. Always would love to get it perfect, but that is never going to happen with the tools I have. But at the same time, every time I do this, I'll be getting a little better and know a little bit more, have a bit more experience for the next ones. So then hopefully one day when I get my beautiful, massive ammonites that I found myself that I can prep, I will have a lot more experience and do a much better job with them. So.
Yeah, so Mr. Landfill, in response to that question, a lot of people now actually sell unprepped ammonites in the Yorkshire area, and I do appreciate that to get them to Michigan might be a little pricey, but from Yorkshire I can tell you that there are at least 3 I know of that sell unprepped ammonites. I've got one of them, one of the websites in front of me, so I'll just point you at it now, is yorkshirefossils.net, YORKSHIREFOSSILS.net, and they've got a website as well for prepped fossils. They're the ones that are prepping my ichthyosaur and my big ammonite, but they also sell unprepped ammonites as well. There are other websites, so Zoic, who I got my fossil tips from, often has unprepped ammonites for sale. As does the Yorkshire Fossil Hunter, I think that's his website. If you just look him up, you'll be able to find it. As does Whitby Fossils. I am biased with the people I know to source this from, in the fact that these are the guys who have also produced YouTube videos from my local area, but also have been collecting for a long period of time and doing it commercially, so are probably the people who know more. They also tend to have better tools or links, so some of their fossils will be incredible and stunning. Like they've got some absolutely out of these world ammonites that I've seen on all their sites and all the things they found. But at the same time, a lot of them sell these nodules. So I talk about nodules when it comes to ammonites. They'll be like this, and you'll see like an edge of an ammonite sticking out, but then it'll be covered in matrix. And most of the ones will have an ammonite in them like that. You can open them with a hammer and chisel, so if you ever see a video with me doing this to a fossil, it's because I've hit it with a hammer and chisel, and you can probably see there's a break going all the way around this one. And that's the easiest way to open a lot of them rather than try and prep through all of this. But sometimes hitting with the hammer and chisel has the intended or unintended effect of, breaking fossils. So there's a bit of a trade-off. What would you rather do is open it quickly, find out whether or not it's well preserved, or prep it and then find out it's not well preserved, having spent 2-3 hours on it. It's a bit of a trade-off. But again, there's a lot of ammonites. Ammonites are incredibly common, at least in the Yorkshire coast, as far as fossils are concerned. So most people tend to just bite the bullet, smack them with a hammer. If there's something rare inside, they stick it back together if it's fallen apart, if they can. Or get it prepped if they can see the outside. So for example, if you just see like a keel like this sticking out and it's a really big ammonite, like I did in my last video from Port Mulgrave Part 2, I find a monster ammonite with just that edge sticking out all the way around. At that point there, it's worth it. and not worth hitting. You send that to someone to prep because you know there's going to be a beautiful ammonite inside it. So it's a bit of experience as well, whether you hit something or not. And more often than not, when I hit things at the minute, they break and aren't very good. So I'm still learning that technique too. No worries, Mr. Landfill. As I said, I appreciate you chatting to me. I'm glad I can help point someone who's enthused at some resources, and hopefully they can get more enthused about fossils, rocks, whatever. And if I can help with that, great. They also, as I said, nearly all of them produce their own YouTube videos, not to try and send you away from my channel, but they do produce some really cool videos. Anything that I can do to get people more enthused, I will do. And as much as I'd love to say I'm going to prep every Sunday at this time, it is unlikely, mostly because my fiance would probably kill me. But at the minute she's at work, so I am taking advantage of this and doing some fossil prep. Otherwise it will be during the days, in the weeks, when she's not here, that I will be able to do my prep. Likewise, fossil hunts I tend to do in the weekdays. And then we'll chuck up the videos normally 24 to 48 hours after I do the hunt, although that is a little variable depending on how long the videos are and what I found. Yeah, that is very much a reality. Let me just see if I got my bag. Yeah, my bag is sat right next to me. My fossil prep bag, or my fossil carrying bag, is full of this stuff. Bubble wrap, for that reason. Nothing terrifies me more than finding something stunning and falling over and shattering it. Because that would make me probably cry and give up altogether if I found something incredibly rare. So here it is currently 4:14 p.m. So we're a few hours ahead of you. So that's just the joy of the time difference. I'm going to be actually giving this a quick wipe down. I'm done as far as my prep, I think, with it. I don't think it's going to get much better. This edge here, I don't know if it's going to be much better, even if I spend hours on it. So I'm going to give this a good rinse, give it a brush, and then I'll show you it when it's fully tidied up, just to wrap this one up. And then I'll also show you what it was at the beginning and all the way through the different stages. So bear with me as I come back in a second. Right, so there we go. Having given it a rinse, you can now see that color really nicely. It looks beautiful. I'm really pleased with that as far as the prep. So we got pyrite sticking out pretty much all the way around from there, and those suture patterns, we can hopefully see them really nicely there. So that's a beauty. The shell, where I've kept it on, or been able to keep it on up here, it's a nice brown color. I will give this a covering in paraloid or B72 Mauvital. It's basically a resin that dissolves in acetone or ethanol, and so you can cover that, and it basically helps preserve things. The biggest problem with any of these things that are preserved in pyrite is if you get them in an environment where it's humid, and if anyone knows anything about the UK, you know that it is humid because it rains a lot here. It has a bad habit of rusting and therefore destroying your fossils. So if we can get them covered to reduce the amount of water and air getting to them, we'll reduce the rust and the concern. But yeah, I'm really pleased with that ammonite. So let me show you what it looked like when I found it. If you want to believe me, this is what it looked like when I found it. So, as shown earlier, just right of center. Yeah, so just right of center, you can see just the edge sticking out of the pebbles, the shale on the beach. If you go fossil hunting in Yorkshire, the little broken bits like at the bottom are incredibly common. When I pulled it out of the rock, this is what it looked like. So the exposed edge would be at the top of the screen, and you can just about see the left edge of the ammonite is the left edge. Let me show you here. So that bit is this bit here. The right edge, this bit, is what you can see on the right edge of the screen, and the rest of that was under rock. And so it's been quite a journey from beach to fossil prep cabinet to prepped, and so that's where we are. I am incredibly pleased with that as an ammonite, as a stunner. El Escher, thank you for joining. Man Lambo's channel is one of my favorites. He does some incredible fossil finding. Again, Mr. Landfill, I don't know how much you watch fossil channels on YouTube. His I would highly recommend. He's probably one of the most highly subscribed fossil hunters on YouTube with 300,000 plus. He fossil hunts in New Zealand, gets some cool crabs. He's got his penguin recently, cool stuff, whales, and so that's how people have started finding my channel. I was very lucky. A guy called Mam Lambo, his website is, if you look at the comment two above that last Mam Lambo fossils, you should be able to find him fairly easily. But he does some cool fossil hunting in New Zealand. He found some whale teeth sticking out of a rock, which he got scanned. And my background is in fossil scans and doing 3D modeling with fossil scans. And so I asked him if he'd done anything with those whale scans. He said he had not achieved anything with them. So I asked him if he would be willing to send them my way and see what I could do with them. And I was lucky enough to get the scans. He was very kind to share. I was able to get some video or some 3D models of the teeth inside that rock out that align really nicely with what he can see on the surface. So I'm hopeful that it will help him prep it all. And it looks like it could be a stunner with something like, I think he said 10. I think I counted 13 to 14 teeth in that, including with a jawbone. So I look forward to seeing him fully prep it. And yeah, I will happily talk about my 3D scanning work with fossils at the next time. But I think having done that with this Hildoceras ammonite from Yorkshire, I will probably be winding down my stream today. I've been at this for 2 hours 20. But next time I think I might pick up the next Hildy, see if we can replicate this on this one, which is exactly the same species of ammonite. So you can just tell that because of this little bit here. That's the same keel, so it should be another one of these in here. Just tucked underneath this rock again. That's the inner bit, so that'll be this bit. and I think there might be a broken outer edge like this sitting under this bit here. Mr. Landfill, been my pleasure. As I said, there's something I work on streaming when I can, because I do this anyway, so I'll be fossil prepping when I can anyway with finds. I've got an absolute bucket load of them down there. So those are all the ones that came out of my last hunt. There's some stunners in there. So I'll be prepping those. And the streams, even if you can't watch them live, they live on YouTube now forever. And so if you missed one or want to catch up, feel free to watch them at any time. The pleasure I have in prepping the fossils, I'm really glad that you guys are enjoying watching it. And I will also be hopefully getting a better webcam in the next day or two. I've got a 4K webcam coming, which hopefully will respond better to the light and allow me to get better video. So I'm hoping the camera setup and everything's been alright for you now, but it should get even better in the coming days. So I'm hoping those videos will improve as well. I will be going fossil hunting again next week, so there'll be new fossil hunt videos going up as well in the next week. It is a joy as well of winter. It might be a terrible, terrible bit of weather for most people, but it is actually a joy in the UK, because it means all the cliffs that the fossils are coming out of are eroding. They're falling down, fresh finds, and lots of fresh finds. So I'm making the most of our terrible weather and snow and all the rest that we've had the last few days to go fossil hunting as much as I can, and hopefully be able to bring you guys some more fossils, and also be able to do some more fossil prep when the tides don't line up with everything. But no, I appreciate all of you being here, and I appreciate everyone who's been commenting. Mr. Landfill, thanks for keeping me entertained. Alessio, thanks for chipping in. I do appreciate hearing where people have joined me from, and I know I will be making a video at some point sharing some of the videos that I watch as well, some of the websites. So in the US, there's a few channels I watch for fossils that are fossil hunting in the States, particularly Florida, but they do bounce around the US. So there's some cool ones there that I will be able to recommend for you all soon as well. And then yeah, Mam Lambo is my big one from New Zealand, and then Yorkshire fossils, the Yorkshire fossil hunter, Whitby fossils are all good ones for Yorkshire if you wanted to see more of basically what I'm finding, but from people who've been doing the videoing and the finding for a lot longer. They tend to show off really nice prep fossils at the end of their videos. I currently don't have super nice prep fossils like they do, but those will be coming in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, with the ones that I've sent off 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago. So I'll be able to show you some really cool things that I've been finding. But I do appreciate all of you showing up. Mr. Landfill, I look forward to having you join me when you can from work, if it's not too busy. And all of you, likewise, do come along next time. You are available. Sorry, I'm just going to take my gloves off now because I'm getting dust everywhere. But yeah, next time I stream, I will look forward to seeing all of you there. And if you can't join me, no worries. As I said, catch the videos. They'll be on the YouTube channel forevermore for you to be able to watch after the fact. They'll equally press ×2 if you want to speed through it, to jump through. So thanks again, everyone. Please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't. And thank you for watching.